I was halfway through a deployment in Kandahar when I got an email. 3 sentences. Divorce filed, bank account emptied, my house now occupied by a man wearing my sweatshirt. I didn't reply with anger. I replied with one word, understood. And then I got to work. I got the divorce papers by email while I was still stationed in the desert. 13 years of marriage ended in a PDF attachment. My name is Cole Briggs. I'm 42 years old, a staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne, and I'd been in Kandahar for just over 4 months when my wife Lauren decided she was done waiting. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." The message itself was 3 sentences long. She'd already filed the paperwork, she'd already emptied our joint account, she'd already moved her new boyfriend Derek into our house back in Spokane. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, walked to the communal showers, took the kind of scrub down that didn't touch the layer that had just grown under my skin, dressed for my shift like it was any other day. Said nothing to anyone. When I got back to my bunk that night, I replied with one word. Understood. That was it. No arguments, no threats, no questions. Marcus Hill, my bunkmate, looked up from his paperback when I sat down. "You good, Briggs?" he asked, voice casual, eyes sharper than they looked. "Yeah," I said, "just some stuff back home." He nodded. Didn't ask again. That's how it works out here. Military guys don't pry. They wait for you to open the door. I didn't. Not yet. Truth is, I wasn't even surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had already started shifting. Small things. Lauren stopped asking how my day was, started working late at the dental clinic where she answered phones, started hitting the gym 3 times a week but never seemed to sweat, new clothes, new friends I'd never met, new passwords on her phone. I never followed her, never checked messages. That's not how I'm wired. But I'm not blind either, so I made some quiet moves of my own, no drama, just strategy. I rented a storage unit across town, moved in the essentials, our birth certificates, the marriage license, the VA loan deed, still only in my name. The paperwork tied to my military benefits, my grandfather's watch, my mother's silver, things that mattered. I opened a secondary account at a separate bank, started routing a portion of my pay there. Not a lot, just enough, just in case. The night before deployment, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her voice was soft, her arms warm, but her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband going to war. I should have known then, but part of me hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What Lauren didn't understand was that I never start fights, but I always finish them. I'd met her at a barbecue in 2010 on leave, crashing with my buddy Jason for a few weeks. She was finishing nursing school back then, but ended up working front desk at a dental office. Said it was less stress. We were married 8 months later. She used to say she was proud of my service, though she never really understood it. Her father was a bank manager. Her brother sold pharmaceuticals. No one in uniform in her family. She'd ask me when I was going to get a real job. Didn't realize the Army wasn't something I was passing time with. It was where I felt like I belonged. In 2014, we bought our house. Modest. 3 bedrooms, quiet yard, clean sidewalks. The VA loan was under my name only, but I added hers to the deed, because that's what husbands do. My father died a year later, heart attack, shoveling snow. My mom passed 3 years after that, lung cancer, never smoked a day in her life. They left me a little money, not enough to coast, but enough to cover our student loans and give us breathing room. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan. Every time I came home, Lauren felt a little more distant, a little more like she'd grown roots somewhere I didn't fit. I didn't sign up to be a military wife, she told me once when I talked about re-upping for another 4 years. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood, I really did. But I also knew I wasn't ready to hang it up. The Army was the one place people counted on me, where I knew what mattered. In 2019, things turned. Lauren started cutting our calls short during her girls' nights, started talking about her friend Melissa, who'd left her husband and was living her best life. Started saying we didn't really have much in common anymore. I suggested counseling. She said we were just going through a phase. Then came the gym outfits, the weekends with coworkers, the energy that disappeared when I walked in the door. I watched, I said nothing. My dad taught me that if you wait long enough, people will show you who they are. So I waited, and now here I was, 10,000 miles from home, sand in my boots, steel in my spine, staring at a 3-sentence email that broke a marriage but not the man it was sent to. She thought she was ending a chapter. She didn't know she was setting something else in motion. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel grief. I felt something else. Focus. And from that moment forward, the mission had changed. 2 weeks after that email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. Notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal. $88,500, 0 cents. Just like that, almost everything that was left. I set my fork down, pulled up the app. Our joint account was down to $22.37. Our savings, $47.00 we'd built up together over the years, was gone. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I didn't react, didn't cuss, didn't flip the table or storm out. I just sat there, chewing air. Marcus glanced over from the next table. Bad news? I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. He nodded and went back to his tray. That night, I called our bank from the base phone center. The rep was polite, professional, confirmed what I already knew. Lauren had been making small transfers for weeks, nothing big enough to flag, not at first. Then the real withdrawals began, just after I deployed. I hung up. Walked outside, stood in the hallway, watched the guys around me talking to their wives, their kids, their parents, people laughing, living, carrying on, while my life was unraveling in silence. That's when Marcus found me. Heard from Alvarez you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner, he said. I didn't answer right away. Then I said it plain, simple. My wife emptied our accounts, moved her boyfriend into our house, sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Marcus didn't say damn or I'm sorry or you'll find someone better. He just asked, what's your plan? Not sure yet. He nodded, let me know if you need anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop, logged into our home security system, something Lauren probably forgot I could access remotely. The camera feed came up clean, crystal clear, and there it was. A truck I didn't recognize parked in our driveway. A man I'd never seen walking our dog, using my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, and there was Lauren, laughing. Standing in the kitchen I'd renovated myself during my last leave. I watched her pour him a drink. I watched him kiss her neck. I watched my life repurposed. Something inside me didn't break. It focused. I opened the notepad on my phone, started making a list. Call David, check VA loan terms, contact Master Sergeant about emergency leave, review refinance paperwork. Lauren mentioned it casually once last year, secure pension accounts. Every line item was tactical. Every one was a step toward regaining control. I didn't feel sad anymore. Didn't even feel angry. I felt clear, sharp, like I was planning a mission, because now I was. At 500 before my shift started, I sent David an email. He was an army buddy from way back, got out and went to law school, now worked quiet legal work in Boise. Subject line, need legal help, discreet and urgent. His reply came less than an hour later. Call me, secure line only. When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Lauren had made her move while I was at war. She thought I'd be too far, too slow, too numb to react. She forgot who I am. I don't threaten. I don't shout. I don't even knock twice. I'd just come through the door when it mattered. I'd given 13 years, not just to her, but to building something solid, something that wasn't meant to be disposable. She thought she could walk away with everything. Money, house, dignity, and I'd be too honorable to push back. But there's a difference between being honorable and being weak. She was about to learn the difference. And Derek, whoever the hell he thought he was about to find out that wearing my sweatshirt didn't mean he'd earned it. The problem wasn't that Lauren had ended our marriage. The problem was how she did it. With arrogance, with erasure. Like I was a placeholder. Like everything I built could be taken without resistance. She thought I was out of reach. But the truth is, I've never been more focused. I don't start fights, never have. But I've ended a few. And this one was just getting started. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. No parade, no reunion, no welcome sign. I didn't tell Lauren I was coming home. Didn't text, didn't call. I checked into a motel under a different name. Small place on the edge of Spokane, cash only, quiet. I wore plain clothes, kept my head down. The only person I contacted was David. We met at a diner 20 minutes outside of town. One of those spots with worn booths and a waitress who didn't ask questions. David slid into the seat across from me with a folder in hand. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel like it too," I replied. He handed me the folder. Everything we talked about, the house deed, the loan documents, bank statements, and this. He pulled out a separate sheet and laid it flat on the table. It was a refinance application. My name on it, my signature. Except, it wasn't. Not quite. "She forged it," I said, though it wasn't a question. 3 months ago, David confirmed. Pulled out 330 grand using the house as leverage. "Your VA loan, your name only. You were supposed to co-sign. But this," he tapped the signature, "wrong middle initial. Wrong pressure on the downward stroke. She tried to copy your signature but didn't have the rhythm." I leaned back. "Busy woman." "Gets better," David said. "She listed her boyfriend as co-applicant, Derek Ryan, 2 DUIs plus a fraud charge back in 2019. Real winner." I stared at the paper. My life turned into leverage. My name turned into ink on a lie. "What are my options?" "Plenty," David said. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I looked at the ceiling for a long moment. Then I said, "I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand that actions have consequences." David smiled, no warmth. "Then, here's what we do." The next day, I drove past our house. The truck was gone, but Lauren's car was in the driveway. I parked a block away and waited. Part of me wanted to walk up, knock on the door, see the look on her face. But that wasn't the plan. I drove to the bank instead. Sat down with the loan officer who'd approved the refinance. Showed him my military ID, showed him my real signature from my license. Then I showed him the forged one. His face turned pale. "I'll need to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That night, Lauren texted me. "Who have you been talking to at the bank? Derek says someone's been asking questions." I didn't reply. The next morning, I went to the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance, registered a formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my physical presence. 2 days later, Lauren called. I let it go to voicemail. "Cole, we need to talk. The bank's calling me about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." Like adults. The same phrase from her email. I still didn't respond. That afternoon, David called. "They froze the funds from the refinance," he said. "But there's more. Your boy Derek's been driving your truck. The one in my name?" "Yeah, got pulled over this morning. Suspended license. They impounded the vehicle. And that's not all. There were prescription pads in the glove box, not blank, stolen, from the dental office where Lauren works." I rubbed my temples. "She's been stealing prescription pads?" "Looks that way. Police are investigating." I sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I expected. Part of me wanted to call Lauren, warn her. Old instincts, old habits. But then I remembered the camera footage, the coffee mug, my dog, my sweatshirt, my life. This wasn't personal anymore. This was tactical. The next morning, I met with a bank fraud investigator. Thompson, mid-50s, worn down, coffee stain on his tie. He spread out the documents across his desk like a crime scene. "This happens more than you'd think," he said. "Spouse deploys, other spouse sees opportunity." "What happens now?" I asked. "We've frozen the funds, but some of the money's already gone." "How much?" $14,600. "Where did it go?" He hesitated. "I'm not supposed to share that." I looked him in the eye. "It's my name, my house, my signature, my stolen money." He exhaled, then turned his monitor toward me. "Transfers went to a guy named Craig Weller." "Who's Craig Weller?" "Not our department. Ask your lawyer." I did. David called back an hour later. "Weller's a real estate agent, specializes in quick-turn cash deals. Lauren's planning to sell the house." I didn't respond right away. The realization hit hard. "She listed it?" "Not yet, but the deposits line up, probably earnest money." He paused. "Here's where it gets interesting. Weller has done 3 deals with Derek Ryan in the last 2 years. I sat on a park bench, processing. "So this wasn't just Lauren leaving me." "No," David said. "This might be a pattern. A scheme. They target military spouses, wait until the other half deploys, then they sell the house fast, cash out, and vanish." "You think Lauren knew?" "Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim too, or maybe she's in on it." I looked at my hands, the ones that used to fix radios in sandstorms, The ones that held rifles and lifted fallen friends. I wasn't holding anything now. Just the weight of betrayal. What do we do next? We contact the FBI, David said. This is bigger than we thought, and you're not the first. That evening, I drove back to the neighborhood, parked 2 blocks down from the house I once called home. The front yard looked the same trees, same porch light flickering like it always did, but it wasn't mine anymore. Not really. My name was still on the deed, my signature still on the mortgage, but my dog was walking with another man. My bed was slept in by a stranger, my tools probably in someone else's hands. And Lauren, well, she was somewhere in between all that. My phone buzzed, a new text from her. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. I didn't reply. Instead, I showed the message to David over breakfast the next morning. Don't go, he said. Nothing good comes from that kind of conversation right now. I won't, I said, but I want to know what she's doing while she thinks I'm meeting her. At 9:30, we parked across from the house again. Unmarked sedan, no movement. At 9:45, Lauren came out, got in her car, drove away, headed straight toward Riverfront Park. Just like she said, David turned to me. Now what? Now we wait. 20 minutes later, a silver Lexus pulled up, real estate logo on the door. Craig Weller stepped out, clipboard in hand. Derek came out from inside the house to greet him. No handshake, just a wave. They talked in the driveway for a few minutes, then they both walked inside. David looked over. We following them? I shook my head. No need. I pulled out my phone, opened the security app. I installed cameras inside last year, upload straight to the cloud. She forgot. I angled the screen so David could see. Craig and Derek were in my living room, the one I drywalled myself. Craig was taking wide shots of the space, noting measurements. Derek pointed at built-in shelves I had spent a week sanding, the kitchen cabinets I refinished, the tile I laid with a busted knee. I turned up the volume. We should list by the end of the week, Craig was saying. I've got a cash buyer already interested. How much? Derek asked. I'd say list at 470. We'll push the buyer to come in at around 420. Everybody's happy. What about the husband? Craig laughed. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, duties. They'll take a settlement just to make it go away. I turned to David. You getting this? He was already recording the screen with his phone. Every word. I opened my messages, forwarded the live feed to Agent Reyes, subject line, happening now. 30 minutes later, I watched from down the block as 3 black SUVs turned the corner. FBI, unmarked, fast. They didn't ring the bell. They went in with purpose. Seconds later, Craig Weller and Derek Ryan were walked out in handcuffs. Craig looked confused. Derek looked stunned. One of the agents carried a cardboard box full of documents. Probably the photos, maybe forged listings, maybe the contract Lauren never signed but had somehow agreed to. I stayed in the car, watched it unfold through the windshield. Calm, still, no adrenaline, just confirmation. Agent Reyes called 10 minutes later. We got him on audio, discussing fraud, intent to mislead, wire transfers, and attempting to sell property without authorization. I nodded. What about Lauren? She just arrived at the house. We're speaking with her now. She seems distressed. I looked out the window. Lauren was standing on the lawn, hands covering her mouth, staring at what used to be our home. The box of evidence, the cuffs, the flashing lights. What happens to her, I asked. That depends, Reyes said, on what she knew and on what you want. I didn't answer right away. I watched her longer, watched her search for control in a scene where she had none left. 13 years of marriage. Good years, some of them. Bad years, sure, but real. At least they felt that way once. I closed the app. I just want what's right, I said. And this? This was a start. The next morning, I walked into the Spokane FBI field office, flanked by David on one side and a folder full of everything we'd compiled on the other. Agent Reyes and her partner, Agent Sullivan, greeted us with calm professionalism, handshakes firm, eyes sharper than they let on. We sat in a small, windowless room. They hit record. Please state your name and involvement, Reyes said. Cole Briggs, homeowner, deployed staff sergeant, husband until 6 weeks ago. I laid the folder on the table. This is everything. The forged refinance, the bank statements, the security footage, the link between Craig Weller and Derek Ryan, the text messages, the fraud. Sullivan flipped open the folder, nodded slowly as he scanned the printouts. We've been tracking Derek Ryan for 3 years, he said. He's slippery, never leaves enough trail to prosecute. Until now. What about Lauren? I asked. Still evaluating, Reyes replied. She claims she didn't know, says Derek handled the paperwork, said she thought the signature was digital. It wasn't, I said, flat. It was copied, badly. We noticed, Reyes said. But legally, it'll come down to what she admits and what we can prove she intended. She listed him as co-applicant, I said. That's intent, Reyes made a note. She also signed off on the house listing, scheduled photos. That's consistent with active participation. And the prescription pads? I asked. Local PD's handling that, Sullivan replied. But we've pulled her phone records, emails, texts. We're building a wider timeline. David leaned forward. How wide are we talking? Multi-state, Reyes said. Derek and Weller have been working together for at least 2 years. Washington, Oregon, California. All military towns, all military spouses left behind. And all VA loans? I asked. Mostly. Easier to flip, simpler underwriting, higher equity. You think this is organized? We know it is, Sullivan said. We just couldn't prove it until you gave us a full playbook. Reyes looked at me. You didn't just save your own house, Mr. Briggs. You opened a door we've been trying to kick down for months. I didn't feel pride, just a quiet, bitter clarity. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just wanted my name back. Sometimes that's all it takes, she said. We went through more questions, dates, phone calls, every odd message Lauren ever sent me, every financial document, every discrepancy. By the end of the session, the whiteboard behind Reyes looked like a conspiracy map from a crime show. But it wasn't TV. It was my life. I walked out of that office feeling both lighter and heavier, like I'd shed something rotten but carried proof it had ever been inside me. That evening, I parked outside the house again, not to spy, just to look. Derek's truck was gone, the blinds were drawn. For a moment, it almost looked normal again. Like if I walked up, my dog would bark from inside, like Lauren would open the door and ask what I wanted for dinner. But that house was a shell now, a crime scene, a lie wrapped in beige siding and vinyl windows. My phone buzzed, text from Lauren. I didn't know. I swear. He said you'd moved on, that you had someone else, that you were hiding money and I'd be left with nothing. I stared at the screen. Let the words sit. Then I typed. You forged my name. You tried to sell my life. You lied to my face. She replied, I didn't think you'd find out. I didn't answer. Because she was right. She didn't think I would. That's what hurt more than anything. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that she thought I'd stay gone long enough for them to get away with it. But I came home. And when I did, I came with receipts. And now the fire had started to spread back in their direction. Quiet, controlled, legal, but just as permanent. The next day, David called me just after sunrise. They want to meet again, he said. Same agents, more questions, but this time they're bringing backup from the Financial Crimes Division. I'll be there in an hour, I replied. When I walked into the conference room, Agent Reyes gave me a look I hadn't seen before. Not sympathy, not formality, but something closer to respect. Mr. Briggs, she said, you're not just a witness anymore, you're a trigger case. Trigger for what, I asked. Federal pattern recognition, said a third agent I hadn't met. He introduced himself as Agent Voss. We've been building this case for over 18 months. You gave us the structure we were missing, the real names, the financial trail. And more importantly, the motive. I sat down slowly. How many families? At least 11 confirmed, Voss said. All military, all with a spouse deployed, all involving forged financial documents, fraudulent refinances, and cash sales below market. Each time, the buyer was connected to Craig Weller through shell companies. Each time, Derek Ryan was involved either romantically or socially with the victim. And Lauren? I asked. Reyes hesitated. Still unclear. She's claiming ignorance, says Derek manipulated her, told her you were hiding money, that you'd left her intentionally unprotected. She forged my name, we know. She tried to sell the house without my consent, we know that too. Then what's unclear? I asked. Whether she was in on the larger operation, Voss said. Intent is hard to prove without direct statements. But she's cooperating now, probably trying to cut a deal, I leaned back. What happens to her is up to the prosecutors. Not entirely, Reyes said. Your testimony, your recommendation, your willingness to press charges or not, those will weigh heavily. I looked at the ceiling, then back down at the folder in front of me. I'm not out for blood. I just want the truth on record. It already is, Voss said. But your case gives us leverage to pull the rest into daylight. That's why we need your help moving forward. Not just for you, for all of them. He pushed over a thick folder. Inside were summaries of the other victims, locations, details, photos. One man was Navy, another Air Force. A woman in the Marines had her house sold while she was stationed in Okinawa. I flipped through them slowly, the same sick pattern repeating. Trust broken, equity stolen, silence weaponized. I didn't know their names, but I knew their stories. Because I'd lived one too. I nodded once. Let's bring it all down. By that afternoon, Craig Weller had been charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and identity theft across state lines. Derek Ryan was charged as co-conspirator. Additional counts were filed once FBI traced his involvement with the forged prescription pads, tying him to a separate case of drug distribution. Lauren, meanwhile, had signed a full confession. David called to update me. She's relinquishing any claim to the house. She's agreed to repay what's left of the refinance balance, and she's waiving access to your pension. Why, I asked. Because she's scared, and because she's hoping you won't push for charges. I stared out the motel window. The sunset was orange and silent. I'm not going to destroy her, David. I just don't want her near anything I built again. Fair enough. That night, I received an official letter from the DOJ, acknowledgement of my role in the case, confirmation of restitution, and an invitation to testify if the case went federal. I folded it into my notebook. Didn't frame it, didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory, it was cleanup, damage control. But still, there was a strange peace in knowing that this time the bad guys didn't walk away, and that someone, somewhere, might keep their house because of what I did. I didn't post anything online, didn't tell my old unit, I just went for a walk with my dog. Scout didn't care about court cases or fraud schemes, he just liked chasing birds and sniffing the edge of the creek. And for a little while I let myself forget it all too. Not to escape it, but to remind myself I was still here. Still steady. Still me. A month after Derek and Craig were indicted, the paperwork was finally settled. Lauren had signed away her claim to the house. The bank had reversed the fraudulent refinance. My name stood alone again, on paper at least. But every time I drove past that house, something twisted in my chest. Not pain, not nostalgia, just a hollow space where home used to be. I stood outside it one morning, keys in hand, watching the sunlight hit the window where our wedding photo once sat. Scout sat beside me, tail still, ears alert. The porch still had the small crack I patched one summer. The front door still stuck a little when you pulled it too fast. The cedar fence out back still bore the claw marks from when our old dog Murphy got too excited seeing squirrels. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I stepped inside, alone. It smelled like old coffee and cleaner. The walls were empty, but the ghosts weren't. I saw the kitchen where I taught Lauren how to cook eggs just right. The hallway where we argued about nothing. The spot where I once lay on the floor with a busted ankle, and she sat beside me, laughing, icing it. All of it still lived here, in echoes, and those echoes had turned against me. I stood in the living room for a long time, my boots silent on the tile I'd laid myself. This place had been built with my hands, my savings, my hopes, and now it was just a structure, a crime scene, a reminder. When David called that afternoon, I was sitting on the back steps with Scout. Everything's clear now, he said. You can move back in. Legally, it's all yours again. I didn't answer right away. Then I said it. I don't want it. You sure? Yeah. I can't sleep under that roof anymore. You're planning to sell? Already got a listing scheduled. Clean. No tricks this time. He was quiet for a beat. Then, where are you headed? Montana, I said. Thinking about a place near Missoula. Saw a cabin, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres. No neighbors. You're serious. I've been serious since the minute I got that email in Kandahar, but I just didn't know it yet. You're not re-upping? No. 20 years? 20's enough, and it was. I'd given the Army the best years of my back, my knees, my lungs. I'd given Lauren the best years of my heart, and both had given me something back. But not enough to stay, not anymore. That night I walked through the house one last time, room by room, whispered goodbye to no one, touched nothing, took nothing. When I locked the door behind me, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed, not with vengeance, not with fire, but with clarity. Not every home is meant to be lived in forever. Some are just shelters on the way to something better. I moved to Montana in early spring, the kind of spring that still carries frost in the mornings, but lets sunlight melt it by noon. I didn't bring much, just what fit in the back of my truck, Scout in the passenger seat, and a folded letter from the Department of Defense confirming my early retirement after 20 years of service. The cabin sat 12 miles outside Missoula. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek running through the backwoods. No HOA, no sidewalks, no neighbors within shouting distance, just trees and silence. Not the kind of silence I used to know in Kandahar, the one filled with tension and sand and distant thunder. No, this was different. This was the silence of pine needles falling without an audience, of wind slipping between branches like a breath, of a man who no longer owed anyone an explanation. I spent the first week getting settled, changed locks, replaced old fixtures. Scout sniffed every corner like he was inspecting new territory for hidden ghosts. I didn't unpack the uniform. Left it in a box marked past life. Hung my tools on a wall in the shed. Took a contract to do small carpentry jobs in town, window frames, fence posts, deck repairs. Nothing glamorous, but enough to keep my hands moving and my mind steady. The pension covered what the jobs didn't. I didn't need much, just quiet. One morning, I found a letter in the mailbox. Handwritten, Texas return address. I didn't recognize the name. Inside was a short note. You don't know me, but you saved our home. My husband's in the Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Craig came after us. FBI gave me your name. I just wanted to say thank you for fighting when it would have been easier to just walk away. I read it twice, then pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a horseshoe. I didn't reply. There was no return request, just words sent from one survivor to another. Some days I'd sit on the porch with Scout and watch the sun go down behind the ridgeline. No trucks in the driveway that weren't mine, no strangers in my sweatshirt, no cameras needed, just space, breathable and real. I thought about Lauren sometimes, wondered if she meant all of it or just fell into the wrong orbit at the wrong time. David said she moved back to Oregon, got a job at another dental office, started over. I didn't hate her. I didn't miss her either. Some things fade clean, not because they weren't real once, but because they were too real to carry with you forever. The house in Spokane sold fast. I never saw the buyer. Just signed the papers, wired the proceeds into a new account under a new name, and closed the door on it for good. That money paid for the cabin in full. No mortgage, no ties, just mine. And no one could forge that. No one could take it, because this time I built it for me. A few weeks after I pinned that first letter to the fridge, another one came. Then another. Different names, different cities. Always the same opening line. You don't know me. A Marine wife in San Diego, an Air Force husband in Colorado Springs, a Coast Guard couple in Florida. Each of them had been approached, pressured, lied to, and each of them, somehow, had made it through because someone, usually an agent named Reyes or Sullivan, had stepped in just in time. And each time, my name had come up. Not in headlines, not in articles, just in quiet conversations, in the footnotes of case files, in whispered reassurance that someone had fought back and because of that they were not alone. I started taping the letters to the inside of a kitchen cabinet. Didn't frame them, didn't post about them, just kept them close. Some nights, when the wind hit the windows just right and the loneliness pressed in a little too tight, I'd open that cabinet and reread them. Not because I needed to feel like a hero, but because I needed to remember why I didn't stay silent. I hadn't planned on any of this. I just wanted my house, my name, my peace. But what I got, without asking, was a kind of quiet ripple, one that kept reaching people I'd never meet, helping them keep what mattered before someone else tried to take it. Scout would sit beside me while I read, head on my knee, tail still. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the weight in my shoulders and the way it slowly started to ease. One letter came with a photo, a family of 5 smiling in front of a blue house with white shutters. The caption said, "We kept it because of you." I stared at that photo longer than I meant to, thought about the kids, the father, the mother who must have fought tooth and nail to keep it all standing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift in my chest. Not pain, not bitterness, something closer to pride, earned, not demanded. I didn't reply to any of them. Didn't need to. The letters weren't sent for gratitude, they were sent for connection. to let me know that the thing I thought would break me actually built something stronger than anything I had before. Not a marriage, not a house, but a purpose. And a silence that finally felt full instead of empty. 6 months after the last document was signed, I got a call from Agent Reyes. "Thought you might want to know," she said. "Derek Ryan was sentenced today. 8 years, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "What about Weller?" 12. "He took a deal and gave us 3 more names. Turns out your case blew open an entire secondary ring out of Nevada." "And Lauren?" I asked. Reyes paused. "No charges. Her cooperation helped seal the plea deals. She's moved back to Oregon. We'll be keeping an eye on her." "I'm not looking for revenge," I said. "I know," Reyes replied. "That's why this worked." After we hung up, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was crisp, sharp with pine. Scout ran ahead into the trees, chasing a squirrel he'd never catch. I didn't call him back. Just stood there for a while, watching the wind move through the branches. Somewhere behind me, the kettle started to whistle. But I didn't go inside. I let it sing. I thought about all of it. Kandahar. The email. The forged signature. The voices in my living room talking about selling my life like it was theirs to profit from. And then I thought about now. The porch under my feet that no one could sign away. The land that didn't care about betrayal. The silence that asked for nothing but gave everything. Some nights, I still woke up reaching for a side of the bed that wasn't there anymore. Old muscle memory. It fades slowly, but it fades. And in its place came something steadier. Not joy, not forgiveness, just peace. Some people don't get punished. Some do, but at the end of it all, justice isn't always a sentence. Sometimes it's just the right person standing where someone tried to erase them, and still being whole. A year after it all ended, I packed up a small box of papers, court documents, photos, the letters from people I helped without knowing. I put them in the attic, not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need to carry them anymore. Scout barked once from the creek. I called out to him, laughing, not loud, just enough. He ran back to me like he always does, loyal, free, unafraid, and so was I. There are moments in life when everything you've built is taken from you, not with fire or violence, but with silence and signatures. It's not the destruction that hurts most, it's the realization that someone who once knew every corner of your heart could walk away like it was just another room to close the door on. But pain, when met with clarity, doesn't have to turn to rage. It can become something else, something sharper, cleaner, something that sees through the fog and finds a way forward, not because the path is easy, but because it's yours. Cole Briggs didn't break the day he received that email in Kandahar. He didn't break when his accounts were emptied, when his home was invaded, when his name was forged. He stayed still, watched, and waited. Not because he was weak, but because he understood the difference between reaction and response, between justice and revenge. And in that difference, he found power, true power. Not the kind that comes from retaliation, but the kind that builds itself brick by brick, from dignity, strategy, and silence. What Lauren, Derek, and Craig underestimated wasn't just Cole's intelligence or his preparation. It was the quiet resilience of someone who has spent his life learning when to speak and when to let the truth speak for him. In the end, they heard it loud and clear, not in raised voices, not in angry threats, but in courtroom verdicts, in frozen bank accounts, in letters from strangers whose homes were saved because one man chose not to disappear. That's the thing about quiet strength. It echoes longer than noise, and sometimes it saves more than you'll ever know. So, if you've ever been erased, betrayed, underestimated, remember this. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to burn it down to start again. You just need to stand still long enough to let the truth do what it does best, rise. And one day, when the silence around you no longer feels empty but earned, you'll know you didn't lose, you simply chose to live well on your terms. And that is the most lasting kind of justice there is. If stories like this speak to something quiet inside you, if you believe in dignity over drama, in calm over chaos, in truth that doesn't need applause, you're already part of something here. We tell stories that don't just seek justice, they show us what it means to endure. If that matters to you, we'd be honored to have you with us. No noise, no pressure, just truth, told one story at a time.